Running shoes are the most important piece of kit that a runner can have, and if you search up good quality running shoes, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the options and choices you have, especially if you're not acquainted with the different types of running shoes, the different brands, what purposes they're for. You don't want to risk wasting money on pointlessly expensive shoes, but at the same time you don't want to risk injury by buying a pair of poor quality shoes. Luckily this video is here to help. In this video I'm going to be covering the different types of running shoes as well as the purpose of running shoes in the first place. I'm also going to be talking about how to build a running shoe rotation and the different shoes within that, as well as giving you my recommendations for running shoes in their respective categories. There are timestamps in this video in case you want to skip to the part that is relevant to you, and without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting off with the basics. Why do you need running shoes? Well, the two most important uses for running shoes are to 1. Stabilize your feet and give them support, and to 2. Propel you forward and make you more efficient when running, allowing for quicker times. This is why it's very important to not wear a worn out, beaten up pair of shoes, because not only does it make you slower, but it also increases your risk of injury. This is because the body isn't getting the support it needs from the old running shoes, and the impact from running will start to break down your muscles and tendons very quickly. When I started running, I was completely oblivious to this, and I was just wearing my crappy trainers. And I was running on hard concrete as well, so within a few weeks, if ever I was on a hard surface, I couldn't jump or run or anything without my knees going really achy. Felt like they'd aged about 50 years. I then looked into a pair of running shoes, bought a cheap pair, and it fixed the issue no problem. If you look up a lot of videos for running shoes for beginners, they'll often recommend you £100 products. In my opinion, you really don't need those expensive running shoes because your body isn't being put under as much impact as someone who's training, say, 60 kilometers a week. A £30 to £50 pair of running shoes will do the job just fine. The only exception comes from if you're old or overweight, because if you're overweight, then your legs are having to carry much more strain than the average person. And if you're old, your joints are much weaker and are therefore much more susceptible to being damaged. Another thing is that you'll also be experiencing a rapid increase in fitness in your first few weeks of running. If you've ever heard of newbie gains at the gym, it's kind of the same thing. Your body has so much potential when you start running because your ability is so low that you improve rapidly. And this sharp increase in fitness will have way more effect than getting a fancy pair of running shoes. Common cheap pairs of running shoes under 50 quid are the Nike Revolution 6, the Nike Downshifter 11, or the Kiprun Fast 2, all recommended. Little bonus tip, if you're shopping online, never get it from the actual store or website, because most of the time they have the worst deal. You can normally find a third party which will give you much better prices. Now that we've covered the beginner stuff, I'm going to be getting a bit more onto the more expensive running shoes, as well as the ones that you might fit into a running rotation. But first, let's establish what a running shoe rotation is and why you get it. In simple terms, it's a selection of different shoes used for different workouts, as different shoes will excel at certain areas with running. So some shoes are better at long runs or easy runs as they have more padding and are more comfortable, but some shoes might be lighter and snappier and therefore be better suited to races or speed work. Essentially, a running shoe rotation amplifies the two main points that we covered initially, which is that it will increase your performance and it will also reduce your risk of injury, as the shoes that you use will be tailored to the specific workout that you're doing. There are 4 primary types of running shoes that you can use in your rotation. These are daily trainers, speed trainers, max cushion shoes, and race day shoes. Daily trainers are the shoes that you use most often, and they will be operating as a jack of all trades, workhorse type of shoe. These can be used for your easy miles, your long runs, and will normally hold themselves pretty well during a race day or a speed day. I typically use these on my easy days and my long runs. These shoes will typically last between 300 and 500 miles, which is quite a big bracket, but it depends on a lot of factors such as your weight, the type of shoes you get, the surface you're running on, etc, etc. Even though it's perfectly possible, I wouldn't recommend running more than 500 miles per pair of running shoes, as this can lead to the soles being worn out, increasing your chance of injury. Daily trainers vary greatly in how they feel. Some will be more bouncy and plush, some will be firm and light. It really varies depending on what model you get. Common choices for daily trainers include the Hoka Mach 4, the Asics Nova Blast series, or the Nike Pegasus series. Next we have speed shoes, which the detectives among you would have realised are for speed days. These shoes are typically firmer and much lighter, allowing for a more snappy response when running faster. They do tend to sacrifice a little bit on durability, support, and comfort. Although the same 300 to 500 mile rule applies to them, they'll typically be towards the 300 end of that spectrum, because you're running harder miles in them, meaning that there is more impact being put into each stride of the shoe. Thus, the shoe wears down quicker. Common picks for speed shoes include the Rebel V2, the Asics Magic Speed, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2, and the Nike Tempo Next Percents. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. In my opinion, there's really no reason to get more than 2 pairs of running shoes in your rotation. The other two are useful and are beneficial, but they don't really have any necessary application. A daily trainer and a speed shoe will fill all the roles that you need very well. So whilst these next two types of shoes are worth considering, I would recommend that you question why you're getting them, as you can risk spending 400 to 500 quid on running shoes. The first one of these are max cushion shoes, which are shoes which focus heavily on being padded, comfortable and stable for those easy days. They're typically something you'd reach for after a very difficult workout, such as a very long run or a really brutal track session. The shoes on the inside often feel very soft, very comfortable, very plush. This tends to have the drawback of being quite heavy and not very good at propelling you forward. Common picks include the Hoka Bondi 8 or the Nike Invincibles. And finally onto race day shoes. Finally onto race day shoes, which as you can tell are probably meant to be used on race day. These shoes are essentially like your speed shoes on steroids. They also look pretty cool. This tends to come at the sacrifice of stability, durability and price. Yeah, some of these shoes are ridiculously expensive. These are the most expensive shoes that you will get on the market, often exceeding 200 quid and 250 quid if you're Nike. Because I don't enjoy taking out a loan to buy running shoes, I just use my speed day shoes on race day and that works out fine. I'd only recommend getting these if A, you've got a lot of money to spend, and B, you're looking to maximize your performance in one or two specific races. Because another problem with these types of shoes is that their durability is crap. The same rules apply with the speed shoes in that they will generally be closer to the 300-mile mark in terms of how long they last, but the maximum bounciness and energy efficiency you get from them will only last the first few dozen miles. If you couldn't tell, I'm not a huge fan of these. It's necessary if you're competing at a very serious level because they will reduce your times by a solid amount, but ultimately I don't find that they're particularly necessary. Common picks include the Nike Alpha Flyers, the Nike Vapor Flyers, and the Nike Streak Flyers. Yeah, Nike really does have the monopoly on these shoes, but other common picks include the Adidas Adizero Pro 2 or the Asics Metaspeed Sky. So there you have it. Hopefully this video wasn't too long and you now have a good idea of all the different types of running shoes and their purposes. Let me know in the comments what your running shoe rotation is like, and I'll see you in the next video. I don't know why I finished like that. Yeah, my voice has gone all croaky now because of how much I've been talking.